The god's wood of the Red Keep had no heart tree to hear his prayers, no white bark veined red, no carved face to watch. It was a southern garden of lime and laurel and the old clipped hedges of Aegon's gardeners, with a pool dark as ink and the whisper of the city coming over the walls like the wash of a distant sea. Eddard Stark knelt on damp earth all the same. He rested his hands together as a boy might, though he had learned his prayers at his father's knee beside a weirwood older than memory. The smell of the river came faint, tar and salt, and from below the hill the clangor of the blacksmith's yard beat a slow iron heart. He had not slept. The letter that made him regent lay on the table in his solar, heavy with the king's seal. Robert breathed yet, but in a shallow rasp, and Grand Maester Pycelle spoke of willow bark and leeches and the will of the Seven. The old man's eyes had filmed with tears that did not fall. The smell of rot had lain thick in the royal bedchamber. Robert's great chest had moved like a bellows missing a stave. The man he had followed since the Tower of Joy had died in all ways but one. Wind stirred the leaves. He listened for the old gods and heard only his own breath. Honor had always seemed a straight road. He had walked it when it cut his feet, because Eddard Stark knew no other way. Yet now the road turned through a thicket. Footsteps grated on gravel. He rose without haste and turned to find Renly Baratheon in a green cloak with its golden roses along the collar. His black hair glossy as a raven's wing and his smile quick and bright as his dagger. Behind him came Ser Loras Tyrell, the Knight of Flowers, with the soft jingle of gilded spurs. They did not disturb the pool. "My Lord Hand," Renly said and bowed. His voice was rich and easy, the way Robert's had been before wine and war made it gravel. "You sent word." Ned studied the young man's face. Robert in youth had looked like this, though broader and with a nose that had known fists. Renly's chin showed no sign of having ever met a mailed fist. "You told me last night you could put 100 swords in my hand by dawn. 200 if I call every man of my household," Renly said. "More with time, but time is what we lack. When the king's breath goes still, Cersei will put the boy on the throne. She will tear your letter and tear you after." Loras leaned a shoulder against a trunk, all green silk and calm. "She will not come meekly to the dungeons," he said mildly. "She has bought the watch, or she thinks she has." "I have spoken to Lord Janos Slint," Ned said. "He had, last night, in a bare chamber reeking of tallow and stale wine. He had held the Lord Commander's eyes and told him of duty and law, and Slint had smiled and said that duty was heavy coin. Littlefinger had offered to see to the coin, and Ned had refused and gone back alone. He speaks of loyalty to the crown." Renly laughed. "To the purse behind the crown." Loras said, "If the watch cannot be trusted, then you must not lean on it. Bring your own men. Bring mine. End it before it begins. End it." The words brushed him like a blade. He had met Cersei Lannister in the Godswood days past, and told her to flee. He had thought to spare her children and the realm the shame of it all. But she had not fled. In the hall she moved with the confidence of someone certain of tomorrow. He had spent the night with his old gods and his old doubts. In the end, the answer had been simple in its cruelty. Weeds pulled early spare the field. It was not a northern proverb, but it might have been. "Bring them," Ned said. Saying the words felt like swinging a dull sword. "At dawn." Renly's smile flashed and vanished quick as a fish's wink at the surface. "We will be there before you," he said. "Ser Loras will take the steps to the throne. I'll take the doors and the side passage. Ser Barristan." "Leave Lord Commander Selmy to me," Ned said. Renly's eyes questioned, and he answered them. "He serves the realm, not a woman. If he reads the king's hand, I think he will do as honor commands. And if he does not, honor cuts both ways." Ned felt the old iron of himself then, the cold he knew. He wanted it. "Go," he told them. "Keep your knights near but out of sight until I call." When they were gone, he stood a time longer, listening to the city he had never loved, then returned to the Tower of the Hand where Tomard and Desmond waited silent as posts. "Rouse every man," he told them. "Mail and steel. No colors. We go to the throne room at dawn. Jacks, Helms, keep your faces closed until I say elsewise." He sent for Varys and kept him waiting. He wrote a short letter in a tight hand and sealed it with wax bearing a dire wolf. For Dragonstone and Stannis Baratheon. Another he wrote for Maester Luwin at Winterfell, its words unsteady, where he told of the king's passing and that Sansa and Arya must prepare to travel as soon as could be arranged. He sent Desmond to wake Yoren of the Night's Watch. Then he let the spider in. Varys came soft-footed and smelling of powder and sweet herbs. He wore lavender today. "The hour grows grave," he murmured, eyes like puddles, reflecting what they faced him with. "The king still breathes," Ned said. "Enough. You will stand with me in the hall. You shall read his grace's letter naming me regent, that all may hear plainly whose hand holds the law. After which I will speak further." Varys's eyes flickered. "And what further words will my lord hand speak?" "I will not tell you," Ned said, and watched the spider's smile not change at all even as it died. He sent Varys away and called for ice. They carried his father's sword wrapped in oiled leather, and when he put his hand to the smooth gray steel, he felt for a breath the clear winter of Winterfell, the crunch of snow under a boy's boot and his father's heavy hand on his shoulder, the murmured words that duty is the steel that kills love. He buckled the SWO. RD to his back. The weight steadied him. Tomard looked at the long blade and swallowed. Desmond crossed himself in the manner of the Seven, then pretended not to have. Sansa came unbidden, her hair brushed to copper sheen, her eyes bright with fearful hope. "Father!" Her voice trembled. "Queen Cersei said I would be permitted to be with Joff, with the prince, when everything is done." She could not say die nor crown. She was too much a child and too much a Southron girl both at once. "You will stay with Septa Mordane until I send for you," Ned said, and when she made to protest, he put a hand on her slight shoulder and felt the tremor. "Do as I say." He thought of the letter to Maester Luwin and of the road home under open sky. "Soon," he said, not knowing if it was promise or prayer. Arya slipped in as Sansa fled, hair wild, face smudged, her blunt little blade hanging from a rough belt. "Syrio says there are two kinds of people," she told him, chin outthrust. "The ones who are quick and the ones who are dead." "Syrio is wise," Ned said. "You will not go near the throne room today." Her eyes shot sparks. He knelt to look at her level. "You will do something for me. You will find Yoren of the Night's Watch. You will stay with him until I send. Tell no one where you are but him, not even Sansa." She blinked, some of her fury masked by confusion. "Why?" "Because I ask you," he said and kissed her brow. "Be quick and careful." At dawn the Red Keep tasted metal. Men in mail moved like shadows over stone. The torchlight made islands. Ned went in his plain leather and gray wool with the white direwolf of House Stark sewn small at the throat, and Ice and his Northmen. Behind him came Renly with 100 green-cloaked men and 50 more in plain armor with their sigils hidden, because Renly understood the use of pageantry and the uses of taking it away. The city watched slouched at the main doors in their black and gold, pikes slanted. Janos Slint, his cloak fastened with a brooch in the shape of a tower, came heavy across the stones with a grin that faltered when he saw Renly at Ned's shoulder and the shadow of the greatsword at Ned's back. "Lord Hand," Slint said, "a sorrowful morning, to be sure. Shall the watch stand within as ever?" "The watch shall stand at the doors," Ned said. "Open them." Slint hesitated. He looked past Ned at Peter Baelish, who had come as lightly as if to a revel, a little smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Littlefinger lifted one shoulder, and Slint made a show of pushing the doors himself. The hinges groaned. The throne room spread before them, cavernous, hung with faded banners, the three-headed dragon of old rotting to brown, the stag and lion fresh and brazen. The iron throne squatted like a hedgehog in a snare of spears, dust blue in the morning light. Joffrey sat not upon it but on the step below, narrow-faced and eager, his golden hair fine as silk. Cersei stood beside him in a robe the color of fresh blood, hair coiled like a crown. Myrcella and Tommen were set to either side like fair dolls. Ser Barristan Selmy stood straight as a lance beneath the banner of the crowned stag, his white cloak's hem barely stirring. At the foot of the steps, Marin Trant yawned behind his hand and Boros Blunt leaned his fat weight on his sword. Ser Mandan Moore's flat eyes did not flicker. Ares Oakhart had the look of a man who would rather be in a garden but would do his duty in a storm. Sandor Clegane leaned on a pillar, his burned face in shadow, watching as one watches an alley. Grand Maester Pycelle hovered like a vulture at the dais, and Varys stood near a column in his lavender. Sansa's face shone up from the crowd, cheeks flushed, lips parted. The small folk rustled like grain in wind among the nobles, curious, hungry, wanting spectacle to chew. Ned stepped forward. The hush that took the room had a sound like a held breath. "Your Grace," he said to Joffrey, and he inclined his head. "My lords and ladies, we are gathered to hear the king's will and to obey it." Cersei smiled, and it was the smile of a cat on a garden wall. "The king is dead?" she said, soft as cream. Pycelle made a choking sound. Varys looked at the light on the floor. "Robert Baratheon, first of his name," Ned said after a heartbeat that weighed more than steel, "lies dying." He felt the word clench in the hall. "He has set down his will under seal. Lord Varys, be so good." Varys came forward with almost dainty steps, holding a roll of parchment bound with the great seal and ribbons. His soft hands were deft. Words poured from his lips like water over smooth stones, each syllable crisp. He spoke of the hand as regent, of ruling until the rightful heir should come to his full age, of keeping the peace and guarding the realm from those who would set themselves above the law. He did not say Joffrey's name. Ned had made certain. When the reading was done, Ned took the parchment and held it for all to see the seal. "By the king's will," he said, letting the words ring, "I, Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, take upon me the duties of regency. I ask the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard to stand witness and uphold the king's last command." Every eye in the hall swung to Barristan. He looked at the parchment, then at Ned, then at the boy on the step, his mouth a hard line. His voice was iron when it came. "The Kingsguard serve the king," he said.
Ned nodded.
"And the hand of the king when the king can no longer speak." Cersei's lip curled. She took 2 steps down like a dancer, then held out her hand. "Give me that," she said, sweet as rot. "My son is king. I shall see what little tricks the Wolf of Winterfell has writ down to cheat him." Ned did not move. "You shall not touch it, Cersei of House Lannister," he said, and a murmur rose and died sharp. "You stand accused of high treason against the realm." It was as if the words were a stone-dropped eye. And a still pool. Shock rippled. Sansa's hand flew to her mouth. Pycelle's chains chimed faintly. Marin Trant's eyes squinted small with incomprehension. Sandor Clegane's head tilted. Cersei laughed. "Accused," she said. "By whom? Some northern fool with mud on his boots and a book he cannot read? Carrefool, stark. You do not know what you." "By Eddard Stark, Hand of the King, upon his oath and upon evidence set forth by the annals of the realm," Ned said, and his voice carried to the rafters. He drew out from the fold of his cloak the fat book he had carried too long, its corners blunted by study. "The lineages of the great houses show that every trueborn son of House Baratheon is dark of hair. Every one. My Lord Robert's bastards are dark as night. Your children are not." He did not look at Joffrey when he said it. He could not. He looked at Barristan Selmy. The Kingsguard's face did not change, but he said nothing. Cersei's smile thinned to a scar. "These are words," she said. "You think to make a truth by speaking it plain? I think to make peace by making truth," Ned said. He felt the hilt of ice at his back like a brand. "Joffrey Waters." The boy made a little choking sound, thin and fierce. Ned kept his eyes on the woman who had placed the boy where he Saturday. "And his brother and sister are innocent of the manner of their begetting. You are not. You have placed a bastard on the steps of the Iron Throne. You have conspired with your brother, the Kingslayer, to steal the crown. For this, the penalty is death." Silence blew through the hall like cold from the frostfangs. Then sound crashed shouts, the scrape of steel, a woman's scream. Joffrey sprang to his feet, white as milk. "I am the king," he shrilled. "I command you." "Quiet, boy," Sandor Clegane growled, and one huge, burned hand came down on the small golden shoulder and held it in place as easily as if he held a lapdog. Joffrey strained and writhed, eyes bright with animal panic, and Sandor did not tighten nor loosen his grip, only stood, the hound keeping a mad cub from charging a bull. Meryn Trant's blade hissed free of its scabbard. Loras Tyrell moved like green water poured over marble, and his sword's flat knocked Trant's sword wide before the Kingsguard's boot had finished turning. Mandon Moore shifted. Ares Oakhart planted his white boot and shook his head once at him like a brother saying don't. Barristan Selmy did not draw. Cersei's eyes glittered. "Stark," she whispered, and he heard the wail behind the whisper, the Lannister vanity that could not imagine being gainsaid. You dare in my..." "In the King's Hall," Ned said. "Tommen," he called clearly, and the little boy startled, blinking, a doe-soft face as sweet as bread. "Myrcella, you will go with Septa Mordane. You will not be harmed. You will be fed and clothed and kept safe until the rightful king is crowned." Cersei turned on him then with the fury of a trench fire, hair uncoiling, and took one step like a leopard. Renly's men closed in a ring, and at a gesture from Ned, Desmond and Tomard moved swift as a northern winter to take her by the arms. For a heartbeat she was light and tight under their grip. Then she twisted and spat like a cat. Renly came up the steps two at a time, his men packed behind him, green cloaks like summer grass under cloud. Barristan's hand lifted, only as high as his waist, the old man's palm open, stilling his own men. "Do not," he said to Meryn Trant, and the name was a flat blade. Cersei looked from face to face. She saw nothing she could seize. For the first time Ned had seen it. A shadow of fear moved in her jade eyes. It sat ill there, like dirt on a golden plate. "You dare," she said again, but the word was smaller. "You were warned," Ned said. He heard his voice and could not tell whose it was. "The law is hard and it is not mocked." "I am the queen," Cersei hissed, and in that instant he knew there would be no clean way out of this thicket for anyone. He reached back and drew ice. The air moved, heads tilted, like birds in a wheat field hearing the scythe. The great sword was pale as winter sky. It did not sing. It was too massive for song. The silence was the worst of it. Ned took the step down and Cersei stared at the steel, then at his face. She did not lift her chin. She was no craven in that way. In another life she might have been less than she became. In this one there had been too many closed doors and too much honey to hold under the tongue. "Cersei Lannister," Ned Stark said, and the hall heard his words as they would the toll of a bell. "For high treason against the crown and the realm, I, as hand and regent for the king, do sentence you to death. May the gods judge you." She drew breath to say something. He put the blade down. It was not like striking a stag. It was like the end of a song before the last note. She fell. Blood fumes stung his mouth, and he had time to be ashamed that he tasted anything at all. The hall went blind white with noise. Myrcella screamed and clapped her hands to her ears. Tommen's mouth went round, and he made a soft sound like a frightened rabbit. Sansa's face had no color left. She looked a painted child. Joffrey lunged, and Sandor held him as a father might hold a dangerous son. I stood in his hands. He lowered the point and set the blade's width on his boot to steady it. He could not look at the head. He looked at Barristan instead. The Lord Commander stood as if carved from his own honor. Then he bowed his head very slightly, white hair catching light. "The law is served," he said. "What is your next command, my Lord Regent?" For a terrible moment Ned could not speak for the hollow in his chest. Renly's bright face had gone still as a pond in frost. Peter Baelish was not smiling. His eyes had narrowed to laughter without warmth. Varys's hands lay folded at his middle, unruffled. "Ser Barristan," Ned said, and when he spoke the hollow filled with iron aga. "You will take charge of the princes and the princess. Ser Aerys, you will assist him. They are not to be harmed in any way. Sandor Clegane. The hound looked up with the weary insolence of a man who expects all things of men and none of the gods. "My lord, you will keep the king from doing anything foolish," Ned said. It came out without edge, and Sandor's mouth pulled at one corner. "Good luck with that," he said, but his grip on Joffrey eased just a hair. "Grand Maester," Ned said, and Pycelle's beard trembled. "You will attend the king. Lord Peter, Lord Varys, you will remain. The rest of you clear the hall." They took Cersei away with quiet hands and swift, and they washed the step with water and sour wine until the copper smell thinned. Ned could not prevent the sight from being what it had been. Words went out down 1,000 corridors already, carried by serving girls and pages and guards and a dozen small folk with eyes that wanted a story to tell in wine sinks for years after. He felt old. When the hall had emptied to the pillars, he faced Renly. "You have my thanks," he said. Renly's mouth twisted. "You should have taken her alive," he murmured low. "She was a coin to bargain with." "I do not bargain with justice," Ned said. The words tasted like hard bread. "And yet," Peter Baelish drawled, "there are different markets in which to trade. You have bought yourself a war, my lord Hand. If that was the price you wished to pay in the king's coin, I hope you counted it well." Ned looked at him. He did not bother to hide the dislike. "You will go to the counting house," he said. "Find Jacelyn Bywater among the captains of the watch. He has a reputation for iron. Tell him he will have Janos Slint's office by noon. Lord Janos may keep his life if he keeps his mouth. See that Lord Bywater is paid double whatever Slint was offered for his loyalty." Littlefinger flicked dust from his sleeve. "Very good," he said, and his eyes had the bright watchfulness of a cat at a mouse hole. "Varys," Ned said, "send ravens to Dragonstone. The king's death must be made known to his brother at once, and that he is called to the city to claim his crown." He did not say Stannis is rightful. He had said it in a dozen letters already. Varys spread his delicate hands and bowed. "Will you say the faith's words over the king when the hour comes?" Renly asked, a sharpness in him Ned had not heard before. "The High Septon will," Ned said. "So will I." Renly's smile was back, but it was the small smile of a man who keeps a knife under it. "We will see," he murmured, and left with Loras like a hawk with its hood off. When they had gone, when the sound of boots had faded and the last doggerel echo of whispered rumor ran into silence, Ned sat at the foot of the throne with ice across his knees. He had not meant to sit there. It happened because his legs were weak. Varys stood within 3 paces, a shadow that smelled of violets. "His Grace," Ned asked hoarsely. "Dying," Varys whispered, but perhaps slower than some had thought. "Tell me when he is gone." "Of course," the eunuch said. He looked at the sword at Ned's hands. He looked long. "You are colder than snow today, Lord Stark." "I am the North," Ned said. He sent for Sansa and held her as she wept in a tight silence that did not spill to sobbing. "I wanted to be a queen," she said against his chest, muffled. "I wanted to be loved." "You will be a lady of the North," he said into her hair. "You will be loved there too." He kissed the crown of her head and tasted salt and thought of the hard wind that would cut their cheeks to roses and the smell of bread at Winterfell, of horses steaming in the mornings. Arya did not come when called. Yoren had found her and kept her as asked, and she did not look at him when she slunk into the solar that night. "I did as you said," she told him defiantly, eyes angry and hurt both. "Syrio says a man who cannot stand to look at what he does should not do it." "I looked," Ned said. "I will look all my life." Robert Baratheon died before dawn the next day. The bells of the Great September rang a long song over the city. They told a king down into the dark, the notes thick with smoke. In the September of Baelor, Ned stood beside the bier and said the words the faith wished said for a man he loved who had scorned those words in life. The High Septon murmured volumes. Renly stood on the other side of the bier in green velvet. Pycelle snored once, softly, then coughed to hide it. Varys wept easily. Littlefinger's eyes were like cut glass. Sandor Clegane stood with Joffrey like a tethered dog in a crowded market. After the chanting had ended and the last candle guttered, they bore Robert to the crypts prepared for kings, though the place was new and smelled of fresh-cut stone and resin. No dust yet to match the age of the man gone into it. Ned's hand lay for a moment on the lid. He did not pray. The old gods do not care for gold tombs. "Rest," he said under his breath, to a friend who had chased none but trouble. That afternoon, the small council met in a room grown small indeed. "A grievous day," Pycelle droned, and his chains rattled like distant bells. "A grievous day, my lords, yet the realm endures." "The realm endures," Varys echoed, using the words as a gauze to wrap a wound. "The realm is a powder cask," Peter said pleasantly. "It requires only the smallest spark to teach us all how quick the gods can light a fire." Ned put both hands on the table. He did not pound the wood. He did not need to. "Lord Peter," he said, "bring Lord Bywater. I wish the city watch to be commanded by a man who remembers his oath. Varys, send to all the great houses that Stannis Baratheon is come to claim his crown, and that they are called to do him homage at King's Landing." Lord Renly was not there. His chair had been empty since dawn. He had left in the night with 200 men, taking Ser Loras and much of the Tyrell gold with him. Littlefinger smiled to the corner again and said nothing. Ned's mouth tightened. "Very well. The lords must choose between brothers as they will. Or between 3 kings," Peter murmured, "depending on how brave some men wish to be." "Renly is a handsome boy who likes the sound of his own name," Varys said softly, as if sootcloth on wine stains. "He will seek friends before he seeks crowns." "Tywin Lannister will not seek," Pycelle said portentously. "He will take. Not unless he wishes to try the walls of King's Landing," Ned said. "Not unless he wishes to see 2 kings' banners on the hill against him." Varys folded his hands. "And which 2 banners, my lord?" "The Stag of Baratheon," Ned said, "and the dire wolf of Stark." Peter laughed with gentle admiration. "At least one honest man in King's Landing," he said. "The gods bless us." "Do you stand with Stannis then, my Lord Hand?" Pycelle wheezed. "He is a stern man, without grace or the love of the commons." "He is the king's brother, Robert's lawful heir," Ned said. "I stand with the law." When the council broke, Varys lingered. "Shall I send word to the Rock, my lord?" His eyes were pools inside pools. "Send word that the princes and the princess are safe and will be kept so," Ned said. "Send word that if Lord Tywin lays down his swords and comes to court to answer for the raids of his bannermen in the Riverlands, they may receive such clemency as the king deems fit." He thought of a boy with a rabbit's eyes. "Send word that the boy who called himself king is to be given to the Night's Watch, if he accepts the Black, to live out his life on a wall that cares nothing for crowns." Varys's eyelids lowered, concealing whatever lay under them. "Mercy is a dangerous spice to cook with," he said. "Too little and the dish is bitter. Too much and the meat spoils." "I will not kill a child for the crimes of his mother," Ned said. "The realm is better served by his absence from it." "And the lion?" Littlefinger said from the doorway, as if he would not let the last word be Varys's. "He is not a man to take bereavement meekly. I once watched Lord Tywin pluck the feathers from a dead goose because a dead goose had shat on his boots. Then he may come to court and pluck," Ned said. "We will feed him his own fowl. News travels like fire when the wind is all right for it." By the time Tyrion Lannister stood in the black mouth of a mountain cave in the Vale, breathing stone and damp and old fear, and watched Bronn toss a copper to a wide-eyed clansman, the rumor had reached the mountains on mouse feet and ghost tongues. "Your sister lost her head," the cell's word said cheerfully, passing the waterskin. He had a ferret's face and brave eyes. "Your father's banners are all in the wind. Do we go west or south, little lord?" Tyrion took the skin and drank long. The water was stale and tasted of the skin. He wiped his mouth. "I do not think," he said later, sitting with his back to rock and his legs stretched like a boy's, "that I could hate Eddard Stark more, and yet I understand him. Does that make me a bad Lannister or a good man?" Bronn scratched at his stubble. What would you do if someone put a bastard on your father's chair?
Slita truat, ide recon.
I would not choose my sisters, Tyrion said. He thought of Cersei's mirror-bright anger, of her laughter and the knives she kept behind it. He had not loved her much, but she had been a constant. He thought of Joffrey's wasp-sting cruelty, of Myrcella's shy smile, of Tommen's thick hands reaching for sweets. We go to father, he said. There is war in the air. I hear it. Lord Tywin Lannister read the news without a tremor. He sat his horse beneath the shadow of the golden tooth and held the parchment between two clean fingers as if it might stain. His eyes moved like a winter fox's in the snow. His men were a river behind him. A fire burned, and his shadow fell long. Jaime, he said, and his voice was a chisel. You will break Riverrun and bring the Tullus to heel. If you meet the boy Stark, cut his line and take his head if you can. Kill the wolf and the small folk will go to ground. Jaime Lannister, golden as a god and grinning like a boy at a tilt yard, twirled his sword. The sun liked him. It gilded him shamelessly. And King's Landing? We will burn King's Landing if it burns us, Lord Tywin said. But we will not batter our fists bloody against the door while the stag within looks out the arrow slit and laughs. We bleed them first. We gut their friends. We bring back steel and hostages. We bargain later when bargains buy richer things than our pride. And Joff, Jaime's voice lost its game. His face did not soften. He did not look at the west, to a city that had swallowed his twin's life. Joffrey is a boy, Lord Tywin said, and only Tyrion, if he had been there, would have heard the crack at the end of the word like a fire about to catch a ceiling. We have lost a queen. We will not lose a war. Stannis Baratheon read the ravens in a grey room on Dragonstone while the wind clawed at the sea and the sea answered with fists. He lit no candles. Melisandre's eyes burned enough light for both of them. She stood behind him, scarlet silk pouring off her like blood, her hair a smoke of black flame. The shadow in the room had no source he could see. The Lord's hand closes on your crown, she said softly, voice like a prayer and a threat. Do you feel it? The cold fingers of winter are nothing to the heat of R'hllor, king. I am no man's king who will not call me so, Stannis said. He did not turn. His jaw worked, a hard machine. Eddard Stark has done what should have been done. He will do what the law says. He is a good man, she said. Good men burn just as oak burns, slow and hot. The smell is sweeter. Beware, Lord. Sometimes the kindness in a man is the last plank of the bridge he means to cross. He did not answer. He sealed letters to the great houses, summoning swords to his banner as if the ink were iron. He wrote to his brother in fair words and sent them over a printing sea he knew would not read them. Renly would make a show somewhere under blue skies. Davos, he said later, when the Onion Knight stood before him in grey rough spun that could not hide the man's surety. You will sail with my fleet. You will take my words into the Mander and the Blackwater. You will tell them Stannis Baratheon takes what is his by law. He thought of R'hllor's fire and the Red Woman who watched over his shoulder. And we will light no images of the Seven on the way. As you say, Lord, Davos said. He had a face like an honest dock. He made Stannis think of planks and nails and ships that did not leak. It was the best compliment he could make to any man. Renly Baratheon came to Highgarden to roses and cream and the wide soft arms of Mace Tyrell's hospitality. The Knight of Flowers walked beside him in a garden the size of a small town, where peacocks spread fans like summer banners and small fountains laughed to themselves among hedges that had been pruned into rabbits and stags and lions with their teeth blunted in leaf. Marjorie Tyrell watched them go by with a little secret smile that did not say yes or no to anyone. You acted, she told Renly later under a bower, hands folded in her lap. That is rare for a man who enjoys waiting for compliments. We left a butcher to his work and ran, Loras said, half laughing and half disgusted. It was a good butcher, but a butcher all the same. Renly drank something sweet. Cersei's head is a bargain made dear, he said. It buys Stannis a crown, unless it buys me one. Mace Tyrell came like a ship under full sail, robes rippling. "There you are," he boomed, with a joy that filled the garden. "A sad day for the realm to lose a queen, but such a brave young king now to stand beside the throne." "A bastard," Loras said simply. Mace waved a fleshy hand. Words, he said. "What is a word? If men will cheer for him, he will be their king. And if they cheer for you, then the seven bless us all, for you are handsome, and the commons love a handsome king best of all." Renly smiled over the rim of his cup and did not show his teeth. "They will cheer for whoever feeds them," he said. "Bread, Mace, bread and peace and parades. I will give them roses on their feast days and pretty little coins in their pockets with my face on them instead of St. Baylor's." Mace laughed, delighted. Yes, we shall be generous. That is the trick. Generous. You have such sense, my boy." He put his hand on Renly's shoulder and squeezed it like a fruit he was testing for ripeness. "We shall crown you in High Garden, and then we shall go to King's Landing with music." "It will not be music we hear there," Loras said under his breath, looking toward the east where the clouds stacked like castles. King's Landing heard the clatter of hooves and arms and the howl of rumor, and then the drum of casks rolled into cellars and the whine of hungry mouths. Ned put Jacelyn Bywater's men on the walls and paid them double, and he sent the city's bakers to knead while the alchemists muttered about old fires in their deep vaults. He forbade the pyromancers from boiling their vile green until Stannis came, and Haleen the pyromancer bowed and smiled and assured him they would make no wildfire unless commanded by the king. Ned lowered the tax on grain for a fortnight and raised the levy on wine and brothels, and Peter smiled again with that cat-and-mouse mouth and said, "You'll be very popular among the hungry and very unpopular among the fun." He gave orders that the queen's body be prepared with honor and wrapped in crimson and gold and carried privately to the Silent Sisters, and that no songs be made. He sent a message to Casterly Rock that if Lord Tywin wished to claim his daughter's bones, he might send a litter under banner of truce. He did not expect to see a Lannister litter at his gate, and none came. Sansa moved through the Red Keep like a ghost of her brighter self. She did not look at him when she asked if she might say a prayer for the queen. He said yes. He took her to the sept and stood with her while the candles guttered and her lips moved and no sound came. She had been taught to pray for plenty and beauty and gentle summers. He wondered what she prayed for now and could not ask. He wanted to give her something to replace what he had taken and did not know what there was to give. Arya found trouble as easily as other girls find ribbons. She vanished for hours and came back with her hair smelling of tar and river water. "I saw the ships," she told him one night, eyes shining as if rain had washed them. "They have men with bald heads who fight with hooks. Euron says they're bad." "Do not go near them," Ned said. He thought of short ships slipping along a night shore where no patrols watched. "Do not leave the keep after nightfall." "You have a gift for weaving," Varys said lightly. "May I tell you another strand? Lord Renly's friends say he has announced his intention to be king. He has written to Highgarden. Mace Tyrell has put 3,000 men under green and gold. 3,000 roses wilt quickly against a wall," Ned said. "So do men." "We still have a boy who calls himself king," Varys murmured. "He bites at his leash." "Then you will shorten the leash," Ned said, and wished he could shorten time. Stannis Baratheon came to King's Landing with sails black as frowns and ships that smelled of tar and salt. He did not ask permission to enter the bay. He took it and threw anchors to bite the mud. Davos Seaworth came ashore first and walked with plain step up to the Red Gate, and he asked to see the hand, and the guard took one look at what an honest man looks like and sent him directly up. Ned and Davos stared at each other for a moment in a quiet chamber with a map of Westeros painted on the table and a pitcher of small beer between them. "You must be the Onion Knight," Ned said. "And you must be the Ice Lord," Davos said, and his mouth twitched. "It's a good thing for both of us that we are not what we are called." They talked for an hour without games. Ned liked the man the way a carpenter likes a good hammer, no ornament, useful, honest weight. When Stannis himself came into the room, shadowed by the Red Woman who brought with her a strange heat that made every candle gutter, Ned stood and bowed. "Your Grace," he said. Stannis's jaw clenched and unclenched as if he bit a hard fruit. "I am the king," he said. "By right of blood and the law. Do you stand with me?" "Yes," Ned said. "I stand with the law." Melisandre's eyes, which had never left him, were old and new at once. "The Lord of Light favors truth," she said. "When truth walks with steel, the night trembles." Stannis's mouth twitched. It might have been a smile if the man had been taught how. "We will hold the city," he said. "Then we will hold the realm." Ned had expected to be cast aside, as a tool put down when it has done its work. Instead, Stannis named him Hand in Truth and by Crown and said, "You know the city's stones. I know its laws. Between us, we will keep its people from tearing it down." They moved Joffrey to rooms high in Maegor's Holdfast and put double guards on the doors. Tommen played with a wooden lion he did not want to give up. Myrcella cried at night for a mother who would not come no matter how hard she cried. Ned sat with them sometimes because no one else could bear it, not even himself. The children made him ache. He had sons and daughters of his own. When Stannis asked what was to be done with Joffrey, the Hand said, "Send him to the wall." "The Watch is not a nursery," Stannis said, but his eyes were flat with thought. "It is a cold place suited to cooling the blood," Ned said. "Better a bastard king's son carving ice from stones than a king's bastard carving his name into men." "The boy will set the wall alight with his arrogance," Stannis said, "and the Watch will douse him. Very well, if he will take the black." Joffrey had to be told. Sandor stood by the window that looked toward the river, and Ned stood near the boy, and Stannis stood across from him as straight and unforgiving as a mast. "You will not send me away," Joffrey said when Stannis finished. His voice had cracked. Ned felt some terrible mercy for him even then. "I am the king. You were born of incest and therefore have no claim," Stannis said, with the grace of a man reading a ledger. "I will not kill you if you take the black. If you refuse, the law says you die. Choose." Joffrey looked at Sandor then for the first time, and there was a naked plea there that Ned thought Sandor would spit on. The Hound's burned lips twitched once. "Take the black, whelp," he said, too soft for any but them to hear. "You'll live, and there's meat." Joffrey swallowed. He licked his lips with a little tongue. He looked at Ned, and in his blue eyes there was a flash of something that had been a child's trust before it was taught to be cruel. "If I go," he whispered, "will you kill my uncle?" Ned said, "No," because one killing had been enough to sit on his tongue all the years he had left to speak.
No, Joffrey.
The boy shook. He nodded, tiny. "I'll wear black," he said, and the Hound's shoulders eased. Stannis sent ravens to the wall with the same dispassion with which he had written to the lords. The Watch returned word that they took no part in the quarrels of the realm and would take the boy if he took the uttermost vow, as they took princes in years past when kings wished to put away thorns that pricked too hard. Ned wrote a note to Benjen Stark and sealed it with a wolf. He did not know if his brother would read it before the snows swallowed him whole. The Riverlands burned. Catelyn Stark stood on a high tower of Riverrun and smelled smoke and thought of carts and mothers and the sound a house makes when flame eats it. Robb stood beside her, taller every day, gray eyes like his father's and quicker hands. A raven sat on the parapet, preening, one eye like a bead, and the letter at her belt was a weight that dragged her as if tied to her bones. "He killed her," Robb said when she told him. His voice barely changed. "The Queen." "He did the law," Catelyn answered. That was a thing she had always understood and always hated. "And now Lord Tywin marches, and Jaime lays siege to our own kin. They called the banners. Men came like rain, some hard and some thin, all armed with any steel they had. The great Jon roared at the boy he called king, which made men smile because there were kings in the wind now and the wolf might howl at moons with the best of them." Robb's jaw set. He would not be a king. He would be a son who went to his father's aid and a Tully who lifted the siege from his mother's home. They rode. Catelyn rode too, because she would not spend another winter waiting for news that came late. The war began in earnest there between hills with names that would mean little to the dead and less to the living eye. And a generation, and men fell to sleep without hands and woke without sons. Jaime Lannister came up to the gate of Riverrun with banners snapping in a river breeze and his helmet under his arm, hair like woven gold and smile as bright as the steel of his teeth. He made a gesture as if to embrace Edmure Tully across the space between walls and siege engines. "Cousin," he called, one hand raised in jape. "I've come to sup." Edmure looked like a man who had forgotten the taste of bread. "You'll sup on arrows." "Arrows give me indigestion," Jaime confessed, a melancholy humor that would charm a septa. He turned his horse with one knee. "Bring forward the ladders." The siege bit. Robb Stark crossed the neck and split his men the way his father would have, quiet and sure. He sent Roose Bolton where it was coldest, and went himself where the lion's head seemed brightest. He crossed the Green Fork with help of men who had guided cattle across it all their lives and splashed into war hip-deep. He took Jaime at the Whispering Wood with moonlight pouring through leaves and men moving like cats. The Kingslayer fought like a story and killed his way out twice and was brought down the third time under a pile of boys become men in a night. He laughed through broken lip when they took his sword. "Your father killed my sister," he told Robb when they put him on a wagon. "There are debts in this war no man can pay." Robb looked at him like winter looks at firewood. "You will answer to the king," he said. "Which?" Jaime asked, teeth flashing. For a time there were 3 kings upon the wind. Stannis sat the Iron Throne beneath black banners, and a ragged crowd of lords who found law less comforting than bread, but no less necessary. Renly wore a crown of golden roses under Highgarden's mild sun, and called the commons to see how fair kings could be. Tywin Lannister wore no crown and sent no bard to sing his name. He sat his horse and watched the way men moved and thought about coin. When he moved, the river ran red. Tyrion Lannister came to King's Landing by the river road, in a litter that jounced, with Bronn riding before and Shagga and Chella and half a dozen bloody mountain men grinning at the walls as if a castle were a sheep pen they fancied tearing. He went to his sister's rooms before he remembered there was no sister. He went to the council chamber instead and found Eddard Stark with a cup of watered wine and the look of a man who had chopped wood all day and found there was more wood for the winter yet. "So," Tyrion said, "you killed my sister." "I killed the queen," Ned said, and they looked at each other across a table that had held maps of blood and bread both. "You have the thanks of the realm for bringing your mountain friends to the gate and not through it." "They don't like water enough to bathe," Tyrion said. "Gates offend them less. I came to offer peace." "Peace?" Ned said carefully, and the old pain behind his ribs turned like a slow key. "My father cannot beat both the North and the Crown," Tyrion said. "Nor can he be besieged by Stannis while fighting Robb. He will trade. Your daughters, my niece and nephew, my merry brother. What a market." He drank and grimaced. "Piss. I will not trade children," Ned said. "Your brother will answer for the men slain in the streets of King's Landing when he attacked me. Not with his head. With his parole to return to his captivity if called for. I will trade that for the Riverlands." Tyrion smiled like a man who hears a song and knows the words. "You are wise and stubborn," he said. "If we had been born peasants together, we might have shared a cup all our lives." "If we had been born peasants, we would be farmers now and happy," Ned said. "You will take this to your father?" Tyrion did, and Lord Tywin's reply was a thing of iron. He would withdraw no spear until Jaime sat in his tent and sipped spiced wine and mocked old tales about the Mad King. He would bring no peace bought by admitting his daughter's guilt. He would not plunge at King's Landing while Stannis and the Wolf waited with their names drawn into law. He would gnaw the Riverlands like an old boar on a root until the root was gone. Summer by then was growing sick. Bread ran as thin as patience. There were dead horses in the roads and dead men in the green of castles and dead kings in songs only half sung. Stannis took no pleasure and ordered salt fish rationed and had bakers whipped for cutting flour with chalk. He dismissed Pycelle from the council table as a dodderer who had kissed too many Lannister rings, and the old man wept and shuffled away. He raised Davos to a stool at the table because Davos said what he thought and it turned out to be useful more often than not. He spoke little to Melisandre where men could see and spoke much where no one could. "Renly will come," he told Ned. He has no stomach for long wars. He will bring Tyrells. If they come to my banners, we will hold the realm together with velvet. If they do not, then we will cut it with steel until it fits." "Men are not cloth," Ned said. "They bleed. So do kingdoms," Stannis replied, as if that were an end to that. The riot came on a hot day when the fish smelled as if it had forgotten itself. Bread carts slipped through streets like hunted things, and someone threw a stone that remembered being a tower once. A baker's boy fell, and a woman screaming started the contagion. They rushed the sept before anyone could say a prayer. Joffrey would have ridden into it if Sandor had not taken his bridle and turned him like a stubborn mule. "Do you like your guts inside or outside, your grace?" he asked, almost cheerful. Sansa was coming from the sept with Septa Mordain when the crowd boiled into the square like stew. Men grabbed. Hands like claws tore at silk. A tile fell and cracked between them. Ned's men were there because Ned had believed in misfortune, and Tomard put his arm like a tree between Sansa and a butcher who wanted to pull her down to sell her ring finger. Arya went feral and bit a hand that found her braid and spitted her would-be thief with the point of needle in a narrow slice under the rib. The man looked astonished and folded himself like laundry. Later Ned would find the blood on her cuff and scrub it off himself, while she scowled and told him Syrio had said you must never show your enemy what you regret. The hound lifted Sansa from the thicket of hands as if she weighed no more than a basket of flowers. He set her on his horse and he rode her through the press like a plow through wet earth, his mouth a grim line. "Look away," he told her, and did not look away himself. They fed the city the next day with grain from Rosby, opened by threat and coin. They hung 4 men for throwing stones at the September and 3 for robbing a baker. Stannis said, "Mercy breeds wolves," and Ned said nothing, because he had seen wolves and seen mercy, and they were both sharp. Renly came at last with banners that waved like a garden and hosts that sang. Mace Tyrell in rose-sprigged silk and too small a horse looked like a table heaped with pies. The sight that might have made the commons cheer in softer days made them only stare, thin and suspicious, in streets that still smelled of yesterday's rage. Renly asked to parley under the walls with Stannis, and Stannis said he would parley in the throne room or not at all. They met where kings meet if they live in the same city, beneath a ceiling with dragons painted on it and a chair that makes all men bleed who try to rest upon it. Renly wore green velvet and a circlet of roses. Stannis wore plain black and iron. Ned stood between them and wished he were somewhere with trees. "You are my younger brother," Stannis said by way of greeting. "And you are my older," Renly smiled. "How you must hate that." "I honor you," Stannis said flatly. "I do not love you." "You never loved anyone," Renly said brightly. "What shall we trade on then? Old grievances? I think I'd have the better of those. We can start with gifts father gave you and ends he gave me." "Gifts buy nothing now," Stannis said. "Bend the knee." The word lay there like a dropped sword. Peter Baelish watched it. Varys watched everything. Marjorie Tyrell stood quiet as carved ivory behind her king, her eyes bright, ears open as doors. Renly's smile grew wider, then narrower, then was gone altogether. "You will not have me," he said, "and you will not have Highgarden. But you will not lose me either, not today. I will withdraw my banners from the city and keep them under my son at Bitterbridge a while. When you stand against Lord Tywin, we shall see whether your law holds back his gold." "You would place your vanity above the realm," Stannis said with scorn that could have scalded. "Vanity is the only armor that fits a man at court," Renly said. He glanced at Ned. "What say you, Lord Hand? Have you room on your banners for a garden? It might make the field smell sweet." "I have room for the realm," Ned said, and wish made his voice heavy. "If you will not serve the king, go where you will. If you come against the city, you come against its people. I will put men on the walls who have nothing to do with your games, and they will die while you two argue over whose name is larger in a bard's mouth." Renly bowed, mock courteous. "As ever, your grace in speech astounds," he said to Stannis. "We will drink to each other's health from afar." He left, and the air after him felt cooler. Tywin Lannister did not leave the Riverlands. He drove his men like nails into the map. He put Harrenhal under a banner with a lion on it and a man named Ser Amory Lorch in charge, who liked the sound houses make when they burn if there are children inside them. He sent ravens to Dorne to stir old suspicions and new ones. He counted coin while his enemies counted wounds. He did not march on the city while the stag and the wolf sat comfortably together and the roses hovered near. He waited because waiting had won him wars. Ned often stood alone in the throne room at night. The torches made the throne's barbs cast long bars across the floor. Ice's shadow lay along the steps when he brought it here to keep it safe, and sometimes he put his hand on the smooth, ridged grip and wondered if the gods had made the sword for men like him or for men he did not recognize. He had been made a butcher for a day and the world had changed its shape around the cut. Sansa came, one night like many, and stood at the foot of the steps and did not speak. He went down to her and sat beside her on the stone. She rested her head against his arm. In the silence, the city's breath came faint. "I miss Winterfell," she said. "Even the snow, especially the snow." "I miss it too," he said. "We will go back." "Will we?" she asked, and in her voice was an old woman's weariness, which made him want to hunt down every circumstance that had put it there with a spear. "When? After all the kings are gone. After the songs are written. After the bread is baked," he said, and heard how poor it was. "Soon." She was quiet long enough that he thought she had gone inside herself beyond his reach. Then she whispered, "Was it right?" He did not ask what. They both knew. He looked at the blade in the dark. "It was lawful," he said slowly, because he would not lie to her and would not give her too much. And sometimes the only right given to men is to do the lawful thing when the kind thing is forbidden them. "Mother says you always think you're right," Sansa said. "She is right." He smiled without showing his teeth. "Your mother is very often right." "What will happen to us?" Sansa asked. "We will be Starks," he said. "Whatever else happens." Arya had a bruise on her cheek the next morning. She said nothing and glared at everyone, and later Ned found out a boy had called her a butcher's daughter and she had knocked him down and nodded onk at his tear-streaked face as if to say, "Now you have been taught." He wanted to scold her and to praise her and did neither. He sent for Syrio Farrell and had him teach her until she fell asleep on her feet and then had him teach her again when she woke. The wall sent for Joffrey sooner than Ned expected. Yoren took the road with the boy under cloak, quiet and sullen and furious by turns. Sandor Clegane beside them until the King's Road bent north and grew lonely. Ned stood in the yard to see them off. Joffrey spat at the ground near his boot and said, "I will come back. I will come back with an army of crows and peck your eyes out." Sandor cuffed him on the ear, not hard. Arya stood on a barrel and watched with bright, fierce eyes as boys without fathers became brothers. Winter ravens came early that year. They brought rumors of dead things in the woods beyond the wall and a cold that would not light candles. Ned read Benjen's letters and felt worry like a thing with teeth. When he told Stannis in council, the king scoffed. "Children's tales to keep old men awake," he said. "Children's tales killed good men in my mountains," Davos said quietly. "We will see," Stannis said, impatience a rhyme across his voice, as if he disliked being kept from serious matters like war and law by ghost stories. "We will hold the realm first. Then we will hold the night." Ned did not argue. He wrote another letter to the wall. There were moments when he could almost believe they had saved the realm from a worse chaos. Bread was baked. The watch stood to their oaths. Lords came and bent knees and the old words were spoken. The High Septon crowned Stannis with ceremony and made a sermon about law that went on long enough to make even Varys shift his weight. The people called for bread more than they called for songs, and when there was bread some of them called for songs as well. There were still knives in shadows. There always would be while men made cities. On a day when the wind carried in a clean smell of rain from somewhere he could not see, Ned stood on the ramparts and watched black sails like ravens tilt in the bay. Davos had returned from the Mander with letters from the Reach and cautious words from old lords who loved gardens more than crowns but would not be left out of any harvest. Near his elbow stood Barristan Selmy, white cloak stirring. The old knight had said little since the day in the throne room and had asked for no absolution. He needed none. "I served 3 kings," Barristan said after a long time. "One was mad. One was bold. One was drunk. Perhaps this one will be just. That would be a change." "Men say many things of kings," Ned said. "Kings say many things of themselves." Barristan's lined face made a noise like a smile. "You are a good man, Lord Stark." He lifted a hand like a man steadying a companion who tips on a narrow stair. "Good men are the only men who can become dangerous if they choose to be. You became dangerous when you needed to be. You laid down the sword when it was done. I am old and I have watched many men who liked the feel of steel in their hands too much to let go." "I do not like the feel," Ned said. He thought of a red dress and a head rolling and wished he could be any other man. Barristan inclined his head. "Then the realm is luckier than it knows." Word came then like a storm from the west that Tywin Lannister rode at last with banners that could shade a village. "He will not batter our walls first," Stannis said when the ravens spoke and scouts came in quick with dust in their teeth. "He will seek the river. He will cut us from grain, and from the sea he cannot fight. He put Davos to sea like a knife and set men with muddy boots and hard eyes to the roads with orders to burn what could not be held. He sent ravens to Bitterbridge with plain words. Renly, come test a lion with your roses or leave the scent of sweetness to men who do not fear thorns." Renly turned his banners like a dancer turning a cloak. He came up from the south like spring and stood with Stannis on a ridge where the wind picked at their cloaks and men muttered at the sight of 1,000 men. Ned looked down into a bowl of green with a ribbon of river and he saw Stannis ride where it was worst and grimly pull men into place with his voice as if men were pieces that fit exactly where he told them. He saw Tywin Lannister on a wrist. He like a man who watches a table and moves plates with the tip of a knife. He saw Tyrion below him being almost killed by his own side and then killing a man by accident and then on purpose and then laughing desperately and then not laughing at all. It lasted 3 lives. It ended when the sun slid down the sky and the river ran the color of wine. Tywin Lannister pulled back with the cool of a player who knows he has not won but has not lost, and will not throw his last pieces into the board to die for pride. Night came, and with it the counting of the living. Renly sat on a stone and blood dried on his green cloak and made brown clouds. "We must sing of this," he said, and his voice shook and made the jest fail. Loras sat beside him, head bowed, mouth pressed into a white line. Stannis stood like a black pole. He did not speak praise or thanks. He said simply, "We held." "What do we hold?" Ned asked. The wind tugged his hair. It smelled of river and iron. "The city, the law, a little bread." "It may be enough," Stannis said. It was as close to comfort as the man could come. That night, Ned sat with ice across his knees again and thought of the clean crunch of snow under Boy's boots, and of his father's hand, and of a field where the river made a soft sound. He thought of the gods' wood in King's Landing whose trees did not know his gods and how the old gods heard anyway if a man whispered plain. He thought of a red dress and the moment a woman had looked at him without fear and then with it, and of how he would have to live inside that moment all the breadth of his life. He thought of his daughters asleep in the same keep as he and the thinnest of graces that gave him that when so much else had been taken. He went out to the walls and stood until the stars moved. The city breathed. Somewhere a babe cried. Somewhere a man laughed. Somewhere a woman sang to a pot. The sea made a long whisper. Behind him, the Iron Throne crouched in its hall, cold. Ahead, the world stretched in dark and light. He had chosen. The road had turned and he had turned with it. Honor was still a straight thing inside him, though he had learned it was the edge of a sword as much as a road. He could only walk where it cut. In the morning he would sit with Stannis and Davos and Barristan and speak of grain and roads and a list of names to reward and punish. In the morning there would be more letters, more deaths, more bread. In the morning winter would be one day closer, and the wall would be one day nearer to breaking or holding. He put his hand on the stone of the wall. It was warm from the day yet. His fingers made no mark. He stood until the east frayed with gray. When he turned, the city was still there, and so were the terrible things he had done and would do. He felt the old gods like wind in leaves without leaves to speak for them, and he said nothing to them that he had not already said with a sword. When dawn came, the bells did not ring. There had been enough bells. The sound of bread being sliced in 1,000 kitchens was the city's morning hymn. The hand of the king went down into that sound and moved among it as a man moves among the things he has sworn to keep. Awkwardly, with care, knowing any one of them will blame him if it breaks and almost none will thank him if it does not. He did not look for thanks. He did not look for forgiveness. He looked for ink and for men with clean hands and shoulders that would stand under loads without bending too far, and for a way through winter that did not lead only to graves. He had laid a head at the foot of a throne to keep a kingdom from losing its own. That would not be the last hard thing he did. He knew this as clearly as he knew the taste of snow. He did not need the gods to tell him when a road went on. He could feel it under his feet, rough and sure, moving away over the next hill into a land of men, and hunger and laws and nights and wolves, and things that come with the cold. He set himself to it. He had always been a man for work, and there was work enough now to occupy 10 lives.